Something funny happened while I was finishing up this project. We were practically putting the last brush stroke on. A gentleman came in to the restaurant, and he was from the Alcohol Beverage Control Board, and he was there for the purpose of granting them their liquor license. And on the landing, they had placed a 19th century, almost full-size painting of a figure, female figure, wearing a transparent gown, with her arms over her head and a little star dawn as she was going up into the heavens. And he asked the people at the office, where are you going to hang that picture? Well, what's that picture for? They said, well, we're going to hang it here on the stairwell. They said, oh, you can't do that. There's a regulation in Virginia, you cannot have pictures of nudes where alcohol is being served. And they said, well, you better go upstairs and take a look at Woodward's murals. Well, the guy almost had a heart attack. He said, wow, there's everything in here except the sex act itself. This is pornography, and you can't give you your liquor license. So, panic. They invited the entire liquor board from Richmond to come up and have lunch. And in the room where all these murals are, they looked around and said, well, I don't see anything vulgar about these pictures. If some people find them offensive, they can go somewhere else for lunch, just like if they don't like the food. Hello, thank you. Yeah, this all started when the owners approached me. They said, well, we know he's a good painter, but can he paint figures? And we have in mind something like this. It was what was painted in the Hotel des Artistes in New York by Howard Chandler Christie, a painter from the 20s. But Howard Chandler Christie had painted sort of pinup girls in just a dark setting with no idea of creating a figure composition in light and shade and in three-dimensional space. I was very excited about the opportunity to paint these murals. I was so happy to finally get to use my knowledge of anatomy and the fun of learning anatomy. And now a mural is, unlike other painting, is a planned picture. Most of my work was very spontaneous. To the degree that you're able to plan it in something this long, I had no idea how it was going to wind up when I started the picture. In this particular one of the central panels, I thought about that famous Matisse. He uses really flat cutouts. Matisse didn't care about anatomy, and I do. Anatomy is a tool the way color is a tool. You see, anatomy is used to express a larger idea. A mural, as opposed to an easel painting, is designed for an ambulatory spectator. You can't take it in all at once, as you can sitting in an easy chair and looking at a painting. The drawings were developed as I fancied. There was no, again, I couldn't see the end, but I wanted to anchor the figures in a realistic setting and not just have a bunch of naked people running around. I wanted a figure that could also start out in a musical way, the way a concerto is done in 3 parts, adagio, allegro, adagio. And for both of the big walls, there were 2 big walls where these pictures are going, I used that adagio, allegro, adagio format. And so again, here we have, it's rather static, everyone's sitting down, and the musical instruments and the axis of the figures is mainly opposing diagonals, including the trees, the orientation of the fawn drinking out of the water, the angles of all the figures are opposing diagonals, and then we have a curve here and some up here, and doodle-doodle-doodle, and this picks up a curving kind of energy. The same water, boom. Here we have a coast, another pond, and these figures then start sweeping together, starting here and goes zoof all the way down to that foot in one continuous flowing movement. And that is orchestrating a composition. What are the main lines of directional energy going to be? This is very, very static. They're all sitting down, no one's moving. there's a breeze, as you see in the clothes and in the vegetation. They're being moved by a little breeze. It's not just posing in a stiff way. I try to keep the figures moving. And I had always loved the paintings of the great illustrator N.C. Wyeth, so I took the composition from an N.C. Wyeth figure, so I put my trio here, as witnesses to the bacchanal that's going on in the previous panels. These panels were painted in my studio in the LeDroit building on F Street, which is now the Spy Museum. My custom over the years was to, because Washington was so dreadfully hot, to go and paint in France, in Brittany, on the coast of Brittany, where it's nice and cool. For many years I've been working every summer in the grounds of a beautiful chateau called the Chateau de Guilguifin, but the place dates from before Louis XIV, and it's been in the same family for all those years. The owner let me use the hayloft over the stables, which is a really big space. You can hear the ocean from the chateau, and so that's why the sea then just naturally crept in to the mural, but it was something that no one had anticipated. As I said, this picture was really made up as I went along over there, and I called the clients and I said, how about having an aquatic or a maritime setting for some of these pictures? But you do, after all, have an oyster bar in the restaurant. And they thought it was a great idea. So I began very modestly with just one mermaid, and then I said, well, this has got to go somewhere. Well, I have a great affection for the whole idea of a mermaid. And of course, the figures again were a way I could, using these figures as a way I could truly express my love of anatomy and musculature, just for the sheer fun of it. I took the greatest pleasure in painting these because the owners did not put any constraints on how I decided to compose or use the figures. Some of the most exciting parts I realized as I was working, I said, well, gracious, all the flesh is so nice and smooth, and we need maybe something to make it look smoother and softer. And how about a jagged, dreadful, scary-looking splintering piece that would be as a foil to the delicacy and the softness of the flesh. It's so much fun to have a mural commission because you get an opportunity to paint things they've never painted before. The fun of painting a knee. And all the articulations, hands, knees, elbows, are very, very boring for some painters, but I find them fascinating because all these little shapes essentially become a little abstraction. You have little shapes that look like birds' wings, little shapes that look like hearts, little shapes that look like fishes. And there's a lot of enjoyment in that because you are when you paint this, you're focused on these little forms. It's just, again, the charm of inventing all these little curlicues and making this up from scratch. The orchestration of the energy or the directional lines of the composition really came to a big crescendo in this particular scene. We have our opposing diagonals with the oars and the masts, which all by themselves create a tension between, it's called tension between an axis. The best example is a prize fighting ring. You've got vertical posts. They're all vertical and they have horizontal lines, static, horizontals, and verticals. If you pull the post apart at the top, you create a tension. You stretch the space. It's not this, it's this. So there's a stretch. And as soon as you do two opposing axes or more, you create a tremendous amount of energy. This has a giant axis that is completed over here, and then that energy is turned into an arch. So this circle goes zoof through here, leads us up to here. This goes down through here. All these figures are intentionally designed to create an energy, a visual energy, and a visual flow from panel to panel. The pleasure of manipulating paint for its own sake, I used in parts of the painting, but I didn't want to do it everywhere because it would look like just showing off virtuoso painting technique. I didn't want to distract from the meaning of the whole painting with that kind of approach. You see, you get the pleasures with painting of the manual. The second thing, you get the pleasures of the intellect. You have to figure things out. You have to think about how am I going to use these materials. And then you have the pleasures of the muse. You can improvise. Whereas if you're a lawyer, there are rules. If you're a doctor performing surgery, there are rules or procedures you must follow. So we're very lucky as artists to have these three pleasures: manual, intellectual, and fanciful. I never made a conscious decision to be an artist. I just enjoyed paint and painting. Someone would criticize me at one time and say, well, you're luxuriating in paint handling. I said, yeah, but that's why I paint, because I enjoy it. I don't think of it as a duty, or I don't have a political agenda. I simply enjoy paint, and I enjoy learning about how it behaves, and I enjoy the visible world, and would like to express it through I'd like to express my happiness in painting and using the visible world as my subject.